You write the perfect schedule Sunday night, color-coded and mathematically optimized. But Monday morning, that calendar looks like a prison sentence. Your chest tightens. You immediately rebel against your own plan, doing anything but what's on the schedule. Society calls this lazy. Science calls it Pathological Demand Avoidance, or PDA. Your nervous system literally interprets demands, even self-imposed ones, as a lethal threat to your autonomy. But this isn't a character flaw, it's a highly specific neurological glitch. Today, I'll show you why your inability to follow a schedule is actually the exact mechanism that makes you a brilliant, paradigm-shifting creator. Let's deconstruct the behavior. You know exactly what you need to do to succeed. You possess the ambition, the intellect, and the vision. So you act like a dictator, assigning tasks to your future self. But when the alarm rings, a visceral, unexplainable stubbornness takes root. Doing the task suddenly feels physically repulsive. You sit there, paralyzed by the weight of your own instructions, ultimately abandoning the plan to scroll or engage in a random side quest. It looks like self-sabotage, but it's actually an evolutionary defense mechanism firing in real time, trying to protect you. This is Psychological Reactance in action. Discovered in 1966 by Jack Brim, reactance is the neurological arousal triggered when your behavioral freedom is threatened. To your brain, the Sunday you who wrote the schedule is an oppressor. By Monday, the schedule dictates what you must do, erasing your freedom to choose in the present moment. Your brain's primary directive is self-determination. When a task shifts from an autonomous choice, I want to create, to an extrinsic obligation, I must create at 9 a.m., intrinsic motivation instantly evaporates. The task becomes a psychological cage. Psychologists call this the temporal split of the self. We treat our future selves like strangers, burdening them with unrealistic expectations of discipline. For the highly independent profile, this split triggers oppositional defiance. You flat out refuse to be controlled by the ghost of yesterday's intentions. The rebellion is a hardwired reflex to prove you are still a free agent. You aren't avoiding the work itself. You are actively fighting to restore your psychological sovereignty against the tyranny of a piece of paper. This extreme reflex protects you. While the average person easily submits to external structures, your brain aggressively guards its sovereignty. This makes you entirely immune to micromanagement, coercive control, and mindless conformity. You cannot be programmed by corporate grind culture. Your nervous system demands that you remain a living, breathing, unpredictable force. That refusal to submit is the very engine driving your capacity for highly original, unfiltered thought. But why is the reaction so intense? Why does a simple task like following a morning routine trigger actual anxiety? Because for you, demand avoidance isn't just a preference, it's pathological. Your brain doesn't differentiate between your boss telling you to work or your own body telling you it's time to eat. Every demand is filtered through a faulty alarm system. The moment a passion becomes a codified obligation, it crosses the threshold from autonomy to an immediate, pressing threat. You have to escape it to feel safe. Welcome to the neurobiology of pathological demand avoidance. In a neurotypical brain, a demand is processed in the prefrontal cortex as a standard task. But in the PDA brain, the amygdala, the fear center, hijacks the process. Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory explains this via neuroception. Your subconscious continuously scans for danger. To your amygdala, a loss of autonomy isn't an inconvenience. It registers as a literal predator in the room. The paper schedule is hunting you. When that schedule threatens your autonomy, the HPA axis fires. Your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. You are thrown instantly into a sympathetic fight or flight state, or a dorsal vagal shutdown. Your nervous system is screaming, if we lose our autonomy, we die. We must fight the schedule or freeze. The paralysis you feel isn't laziness. It is a profound neurobiological survival response. You are experiencing a literal microtrauma from your own to-do list. This links deeply to hyper-independence, often rooted in avoidant attachment. If early environments taught you that relying on others leads to a loss of self, absolute autonomy becomes your primary safety behaviour. You must control your environment to feel secure. Ironically, building a rigid schedule is an attempt to create safety through structure. But because your core safety mechanism relies on unconstrained freedom, the very structure you build triggers your survival instinct. You are terrified of failing without a system, yet neurologically unable to tolerate one. Yet this trauma response, disguised as a strength, is exactly why you achieve things others can't. Your refusal to rely on standard operating procedures forces you to invent entirely new methodologies. Because you cannot lean on the crutch of conventional structure, you operate outside the bounds of traditional industry. You don't iterate on existing ideas, you demolish them and build your own. Your hyper-independence guarantees your work will never be derivative. You are forced to be original. So how does the PDA profile actually get anything done? How can you fail to wash a dish, but successfully write a brilliant manifesto in a single manic night? It's because you do not operate on an importance-based nervous system. Telling your brain that a task is important for your future synthesizes exactly zero neurochemical motivation. You cannot simply eat the frog or just do it. If you try, your prefrontal cortex simply refuses to engage the motor systems. The engine has no fuel. Instead, you possess an interest-based nervous system. Dr. William Dodson's framework proves that your brain only synthesizes dopamine, the critical fuel for executive function, under 4 strict conditions: fascination, novelty, challenge, and urgency. When you rely on rigid obligation, there is no dopamine. But when you are struck by genuine inspiration, your brain is flooded with it. Inspiration provides the massive organic neurochemical surge required to bypass the amygdala's threat response entirely. This brings us to Teresa Amabile's componential theory of creativity, which proves extrinsic motivation destroys creative problem solving. Your brilliant output relies exclusively on intrinsic motivation and the flow state. Flow requires absolute immersion in the present moment. Schedules force your brain into polytropism, constantly shifting attention and monitoring the clock. But your brain thrives on monotropism, falling into a deep, singular attention tunnel where your genius actually resides. Schedules kill this tunnel. Inspiration leads to flow, and flow is the ultimate expression of autonomy. In flow, there is no past self dictating terms, and no future self demanding results. There is only the pure, unadulterated sovereignty of the present. When your monotropic brain aligns with a hyperfixation, your output fundamentally crushes the slow and steady neurotypical paradigm. Your bursts of inspiration yield higher quality work in 3 hours than an industrialized worker produces in 3 weeks. You are built for sprints, not marathons. So, how do we hack the glitch? You must stop writing linear schedules and start building dopamine menus. A schedule dictates, at 10 a.m. I write. A menu offers, here are 5 valuable things. Which one feels stimulating right now? This injects choice into the system, keeping the locus of control entirely in the present moment. The demand is neutralized. You must also replace imperative language, words like must or should, with declarative curiosity. I wonder what would happen if I tackled this project today. You must invite yourself, not command yourself. Curiosity is the domain of the prefrontal cortex. Fear is the domain of the amygdala. You cannot be genuinely curious and in fight or flight simultaneously. Combine this cognitive shift with somatic regulation. When that chest-tightening rebellion hits, activate your ventral vagal complex. 2 sharp inhales, 1 long exhale. Shake out your limbs to discharge the adrenaline from the demand threat. Move to a new environment, like a coffee shop, leaving the ghost of the scheduled demand behind so you can start fresh. For unavoidable tasks, you must mask the demand in intrinsic pleasure through temptation bundling. Don't schedule due taxes. Schedule a trip to your favorite cafe, buy an expensive latte, and put on a curated playlist. Make the dopamine-rich autonomy the primary focus of your brain's anticipation. The administrative work becomes a secondary, incidental activity that piggybacks on the pleasure of the primary event. You are effectively sneaking past your own neurological security system by leading with absolute pleasure. It's time for radical acceptance of your psychological rhythms. You are not a machine. You are not designed for the 9-to-5, slow and steady tortoise grind. Forcing a linear schedule onto a cyclical, inspiration-driven mind is a violation of your very nature. Stop fighting a war against your own neurobiology. When you surrender the illusion of control, the shame dissipates. And when the shame goes, the demand avoidance lessens. You can finally just create. Your inability to follow a rigid schedule is not self-sabotage. It is a profound evolutionary feature that guarantees you will never be ordinary. Let the brilliance of unbridled inspiration take the wheel. If you're ready to stop pathologizing your genius and start mastering it, subscribe to discover more about your unique wiring. You aren't broken. You're just operating on a much more powerful, entirely different operating system.